All right. Year 2009, episode 1. Oh, my God. Wow. Yeah, I was just doing a trip down memory lane. You know what? I mean, temporarily, we are at episode 500, and that puts us at the 10-year mark, right? And we're always talking about how that stacks up with other podcasts in general, let alone fitness podcasts. I will say this. If you're a quantitative completionist, we won't have the full, 52 weeks times 10 years quantitative wrap up until episode 520. But I don't want to take away from what we're doing here. So,
it's right around the corner.
Right, that's right.
It's only inevitable at this point.
That's right. It's so habitual to do this stuff, A couple of things just to kind of set up today's time warp episode or time travel episode, because we're going to go back and we're going to look at some of our favorite topics. In fact, listeners, if you hear the harp sound, that's going to set up a clip, and I'll actually play a clip, from those episodes. God, yes, in 2009, I was just sharing this on a text with everybody, of course, we had 267 gigabytes streamed for the whole year. So 267. In 2018, we had 10,750 gigabytes streamed. So we literally only had 2.5% the listenership that we have now. Mm-hmm. So the weekly thing paid off, I think. Not that we're huge. We're definitely not by a lot of podcast standards, but we're so niche. I mean, what can you really expect? Anyway, I will toss this out, too. If anybody is also a completionist, it might not be a bad time to go and just download the EPs, like everything, if you can, so we have a backup. Because if Brinkster goes down, if our server goes down, I mean, I've got most of it, but it would be nice to have, just to know that we have 10 years worth of work on someone's hard drive. Anyway. Yeah, and in fact, I was looking at some of the top charts for podcasts, and one of them were in the top 3 of the strength and power podcast, and one were top 15 on the more fitness and strength podcast. But they listed us as starting in 2013, and I feel ripped off. I'm like, we were at it for 4 years before then. Yeah. I guess that's what I mean about backups. That because if you look at YouTube, it doesn't go back far at all. When we started backing up on YouTube, But anyway, what we're going to do today is I only have one listener mail, everybody, and it's about episode 500 from Neil. After we do that, we're just going to talk about our favorite topics, laughs, whatever, over the last 10 years, play a few clips, and then maybe also talk just a little bit about what's changed. Like, how are we different? How's the podcast different? Obviously, our intro music is not that Pantera clip anymore. That is Pantera, right? Am I remembering that right, Phil?
God, I think so.
I can't even remember. Anyway, all right. Well, let me get to Neil's email here. Neil says, I'd like to congratulate you and all the hosts along the way on your 500th episode. I've listened to every single episode, and to this day, it remains my favorite podcast. To put things in perspective, if each episode is an average of 1 hour, 500 episodes divided into 24 hours a day means that I have spent 20 days of my life listening to you guys. Dang. Wow. Keep up the good work, Neil. Yeah. So, yeah, thank you, Neil. That's good stuff.
Just said it right. I went and listened to it. It's Slayer.
Oh, it's Slayer. All right.
We had to change that so we didn't get any copyright infringement.
Yeah, so. And luckily, your brother rocks, so
yep. So
just that's where that comes from. We've had people ask that over the years too, like, where's your mid-show and intro music and stuff?
I give him 10 cents an episode, so he's made $5.
Yeah, yeah, royalties. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, it's just that was a nice bonus for us to have our own stuff there. Okay, well, let's talk about this. So. God, yeah, we've been at it for 10 years. A lot of things have changed in that time, I guess. But let's start with some of the favorites. I cheated, actually, and I came up with 5. I mean, because we've covered every topic imaginable. Yeah. I have 5 sort of topics, and then some of them span more than one episode, but I don't want to start with myself. Let's just do like round robin stuff here, Phil. And again, maybe we'll throw in a cutaway, to the actual clip. But what's one on your list, Phil?
Some of my favorite ones are the ones where we did something that's a little tongue in cheek. So like our How to Stay Small episode.
Oh, right.
Things like those were always fun.
Yeah. Yep.
So I mean, it was fun to do, and I hope fun to listen to. So I mean, that's me trying to not pick out the easy ones like we talked about earlier. I mean, there's some very memorable ones, but as far as enjoyable to do, those were some of the best.
Yeah, episode 1 with David Barr was how to get fat. We gave people clear instructions on how to become fat.
Yeah.
Yeah. In fact, you know what I just wanted to toss in. I think let's rephrase that question a little, and let's have a discussion on how to get really fat. How about that?
Yeah.
It'll just make it a little more fun.
I want to start a show, and I want to make your biggest gainer. Not the biggest loser, but the biggest gainer, and really
there you go.
People up.
But
you know what? I'm going to give you Fortress's ingredients to becoming a fat person.
Okay.
All right. Lots of pop. Lots of French fries.
Yeah, fries would be good.
And lots of bread.
There you go.
That's what you'll be feeling like in a few weeks with that diet, let me tell you.
Yeah, we've done what? How to stay small, how to remain weak, how to fail a gym startup was not that long ago.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the one I had on my list, was how to fail a gym startup, since that's a very common thing now, because everyone wants to be a gym owner just because it sounds cool and you can be an entrepreneur and all that stuff.
Yeah. I can't remember if I mentioned it during that episode, but Mike, if you remember, I sent you a picture of a local gym. What gave me the idea? I was out for like a morning, like pre-breakfast walk kind of thing, and it's got this big signage up and everything, and already, I mean, literally within weeks, it said "for rent," big sign on the door, like already done. So yeah, that's rough. One of my favorites, Phil. You're talking about things that aren't super, obvious. Like when we get some of the veterans on, Pep Wall, was episode 6. We had Captain Kirk and Marty on episode 466. Marty didn't even remember, but back in episode 182, we had Marty Gallagher on just for him, right? Yeah. Bill Pearl was episode, what was that, 94, I think?
Yeah,
so
that was one of my favorites, listening to it.
Bill Pearl was on number 35, too. We had him on a couple times.
Oh,
that's right.
There you go.
Twice.
Yeah. So.
And biggest hits we've ever got as far as that, because people, I feel like we're sort of doing a service in that way, like archiving, these giants, so they get to make some comments and look back over the industry and their lives and all that kind of stuff when they're older. It's just cool. I'd love to get Pep Wall back on at my gym too, because he knows Marty and Kirk and those guys, and trained some world champions and stuff. But all right, Mike, what about you? I know you just mentioned one, but what else do you have?
A couple of my favorites was some of the early ones with Rob and his quest to see how many toilets he could break.
Oh, God, you guys, I can't tell you how many times I listen to that man bitch about busted another effing toilet seat, and so we talked about getting the ones with the metal hinges instead of the plastic ones, and, how long those would last.
Yeah. So every time I was traveling for a while years ago, I would send him pictures of broken toilet seats and ask him if he was here before me. So I don't even know if he remembers that, but
I wonder how many of our large mammal listeners deal with that on a pretty regular basis. Like, Jesus, I broke another seat. They're just they're not built for people that weigh 275 plus. They're just not.
No.
Especially when you give them as much use as you do, because you're eating 6,000 calories a day. I'm back in the shitter,
Yeah. And on a related note, when we went to Japan, Lonnie, we did obviously some episodes about that, and just how, man, everything over there is built for people that are smaller, from the beds to the doors to even like the locks were funny. We have this skeleton key to get into our modern hotel, and the toilet itself has got like 15 space age buttons on it, but you need a skeleton key to get into the hotel. So just it's like a completely different world. And if people ever get the chance to go to Japan, like just definitely go. It's amazing.
Yeah, the contrast, right, between super old school and super modern. Yeah.
Clearly, we are standouts over here. I mean, not that we're walking around like Ronnie Coleman, but I'm trying not to be, sound racist, certainly, but everyone seems to be like they're roughly 100-pound man in a black suit with a black tie and black pants and a white shirt. I mean, everybody...
Especially near the conference.
Yeah, very uniform, but even walking around downtown, like the businessmen and stuff, and very thin. Clearly, I don't think there's a lot of stock placed in big dudes with big muscles. It's just it's comical for them. I don't think they desire it on average, right? On average,
yeah. You get lots of funny questions, and I had a guy whistling at me in the elevator the other day as he's looking up, which was kind of comical.
You are really tall. Hey, everyone. Mike is about what, 6'3"?
Yeah.
The environment here is not built for that. I mean, there's constant risk of decapitation if you come to Japan.
No, you're right, Mike. I felt bad for you that whole trip. In fact, that's one of the things that I put down as far as topics that span different episodes was event reports. Whether it was, occasionally we could get Phil on the floor somewhere talking to people. Now, I know that's hard when people are lifting, and Phil, obviously, you're way too experienced to get in their face when they're trying to get their head in the game. But, when you're at an event or, we did the Institute of Food Technology event in Las Vegas, if you remember, Mike. That was episode 424. Paleo FX. I wasn't part of that one, but that was sort of from the event. That was episode 418. So the event reports are fun. I think that's one of the best things podcasts do, to be honest.
We had the trip to Spain for the big world conference that only happens every 4 years. That was a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah, with Dr. Josh Cotter.
Yeah, Cotter was there.
Yeah,
One of the ones from experimental biology, and going all the way back to D.C. and several different locations since then.
Oh, that's right. D.C. was fun. Yeah.
We had the hotel where we crammed, 9 people in the tiny hotel room that charged us for every little thing known to man.
Right, yep. I remember that was also the one, Phil, you've heard us talk about, we went into that. It was a CrossFit box or something, and they had the giant fake weights, kind of. I don't know. Yeah. I've never seen weights that large. And I don't just mean plastic-coated sort of bumper-ish, for Olympic lifts. I mean, there was no damn good reason to have, a plate that big.
Made out of chipped rubber.
Okay, yeah.
They were bigger than those even.
Really?
Okay. Yeah, they were just the weirdest thing. They were super, super wide.
Wide.
45s.
Exactly.
It was bizarre.
Yeah, they were the diameter of 45, but they were 10 inches wide or something crazy. Crap. Just crazy. Yeah. And so Mike and I don't remember if we have pictures doing that, but we're bobbing up and down, and it's literally stacked to the very ends of the Olympic bar. We just look like we're impossibly strong. It's just funny. Anyway.
Yeah, 315 took up almost all the bar space.
Yeah, right, exactly, right. Totally. Yep. So event reports are cool in general. Phil, what else did you come up with?
I have to get the Windler episodes, just because anytime we'd have them on, you'd always be like, "Oh God, here we go."
I know.
This one's not getting a PG rating.
No, right?
We're not even gonna try. So
yeah, on the show notes, because I don't label us explicit on iTunes, because we obviously try to be more PG-13, but so without labeling, getting a label because of Jim, I would just put in the show notes something like caution potty mouth powerlifters, something like that. Just to give people a heads up. Because there are some parents lifting with their kids. And I understand, right? A teenage lifter can handle the occasional F-bomb. But just to be fair, I had to label that stuff behind the scenes extra for Jim.
Yeah, those were always good. So,
That's a good one, actually, the swearing and stuff.
Yeah.
So if you buy a book off of Amazon, my book off Amazon, and it's not sold by me, if it's sold by anyone else, by Amazon or anyone else, it was illegally obtained. And so we've been fighting the shit out of this. We got lawyers, and I don't know what else to do. And we haven't seen a fucking penny, and that was, so, and, just being dick about it. To break everything down so I can understand it, because I'm dumber than shit. We got a ton of shit going on. And then we have the NOV book, which is going to be massive. The NOV book is just basically North of Edge. There's a training compilation and life compilation of everything of how to suck it up and be a man and quit being such a puss, basically, is what it comes down to. So, should I swear more?
No.
Oh, I was going to say swearing is always good.
I'm like the grammar police. We're going to get bumped off of iTunes. I'm going to have to reprogram our feed to have explicit tags all over it. And Jim is our number one offender.
Yeah, I don't care. Hey, dude, no one buys an album that says, approved by Jesus.
What else, Mike?
I had some of the other, if I go back early guests, one of the first ones I really liked was when Derek Poundstone was on. I can't remember what episode that was, but that was one of the early ones too, and I thought that was super cool just to hear about, how he was training and what he was doing, and just, a lot of the, lifters, strongmen, Highland Games, power lifters, bodybuilders. Mm-hmm. It's pretty crazy to me how open they are with things. I remember a buddy of mine was sitting down with Thor and Brian Shaw, and they were just telling him, here's how we train, here's what we do, and they weren't afraid someone's going to steal their secret or whatever, because even if you did, does it work for you? And if it did, you still have to put the effort in. So I'm always pleasantly surprised how you talk to a lot of the top people, and they're pretty open with what they're doing.
Yeah, willing to share.
Yeah.
Yeah. On the opposite spectrum of that, we had one episode where the person didn't want to share at all. Frickin' Mendelsohn. When Scott Mendelsohn was on, it was like, what do you do for bench? None of your business. Why don't you pay for me? And he just wanted to push his frickin' weed business. It's like, come on, bro.
That's right. I remember.
I'm not telling you anything.
My weed business.
Well, why are you on the show?
Yeah. Yeah, I'm personally not going to go after him. Dude, you're useless to us. No, you're right about the weed thing. That's funny.
Yeah.
What else is on my list here? We did the event reports thing. One of the things that I liked is sort of the philosophy stuff. We had an episode on the intangibles, intangible skills that you just pick up from lifting. When do you really know to turn and walk out of the gym? As soon as you get there. Stuff like that. I think that was episode 412. Or no, that couldn't have been 412. 412 was what's been gained and lost from our involvement in strength training. So that's again in the philosophy camp, right? Yeah. Reflective stuff. I'm bigger permanently, more or less, than I would have been otherwise. But my joints are pretty shot, stuff like that. The intangibles one, the intangible skills one, was actually episode 90. Now that I'm peeking at my sheet here, so I like the philosophy stuff, because that's the kind of. Or one episode we did, I don't have the number, was why do you do it, right? Because it takes discipline and it takes a toll, and so why do you go into the gym? Obviously our listeners are a subculture, a minority of the overall general pop. So what the hell? Why are you doing it?
I think all the people that don't stick to it are the ones that never go to that. They don't accept that it's okay to do the part of fitness they like.
Yeah.
I know a lot of people that could be damn strong, including some women, and they still stick to, I got to run. I hate it. They constantly say, I hate this running, and then they go do it. And, distance running and this and that. And I think if you're going to stick to it a long time, you've got to find and accept that sect in fitness that you really enjoy. It's got to be something you're passionate about.
I think long term, the longevity is in doing this. Oftentimes, as unfortunate as it sounds, oftentimes that initial spark is something that is probably less than desirable in somebody's life. You hear the classic signs of guys getting into weight training just because they're bullied around.
That was a good one, like why we do it. It was sort of a motivational one, I think. So
I don't know if this was an exact episode, but kind of a reoccurring theme is, especially as all of us are older, is the grumpy old men of training and kind of all the lessons that come with it. Because even when I teach now, I'm sure Lonnie, you go through this, or when you're coaching, Phil, I forget sometimes because I don't feel that old. I don't feel like I'm 44. Yeah. And then I'm talking to like some kid, or I use a reference to Seinfeld or something, and the whole class looks at me like I have no idea what you even just said.
Yeah.
I'm like, oh my.
Right. Yeah.
Becoming a grumpy old man.
Yeah.
That is a theme. And you know what? People don't like it. They can piss off, because we are. Yeah. We are. That's kind of Phil's attitude, I know, on social media. Like, you say something rude and just see how many people you can just drive away if they can't stomach you.
Yep.
Yeah.
Our Christmas calendar pictures.
Yeah. Oh, man. Yeah, I get that all the time at the gym. I mean, because like you said, I don't feel that old most days.
Yeah.
So I'll be dealing with people in their early 20s, and then I realize you weren't alive. I was out of college.
Yeah.
We were born.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, God.
Oh, yeah.
So
I was talking to a student the other day, and I'm like, when were you born? Like 94, 95? He goes, 98. I thought, Jesus, I was finishing my doctorate when you were, in the hospital, just ejected. Wow. Wow. Yeah, but, when it comes, that might be a good segue to talk about what's changed, I think. I mean, I've got a couple more topics on this sheet here, but, one thing that's really changed for me is when we started, I felt like I was sort of at my peak as far as bodybuilding goes, because when I ate up to like 225, 228, that's a lot for me. And I started getting fat, and I felt bloated, but I was force feeding. I was going through a lot of the stuff that I would hear Phil and Rob talk about all the time. Because let's face it, off-season bodybuilders force feed too. But that's really changed for me. Sometimes I almost feel like, what was it, Chris Christopherson's character in one of those Blade movies? He's like, I'm sorry I got old on you, Blade. Because that's what happened to me. I just, I'm 50. I just turned 50, and I'm like, well, it's just folly for me. In fact, I took some of this advice sort of from Bill Pearl, is when do you walk away? Don't get me wrong. I fully intend to fight the long defeat, as Tolkien used to say, which is age is going to continue to take its toll, but I'm not going quietly into the night. I'm going to continue to fight, and lift and that kind of stuff. But the motivations sort of have changed for me. It's my single motivation is not just to take up more space, and end up with high blood pressure and stuff like that, and then be on a bunch of meds for it, and and that kind of stuff. So that's something that's really changed for me. In fact, I don't even know. I'd have to go back and look at which episodes we were talking about my competitions, like that last little round that I did, because I didn't compete that much. Literally like every 5 years I would do 2 or 3 shows, kind of thing. But what weird adventures I saw backstage. Wow. The bodybuilding world is really, really can be very strange. But, yeah, that's one of the things that's changed for me. What about you, Phil? What's changed in the last 10 years for you? I mean, obviously you've gone through the hip thing. Jesus.
My whole life's changed. Since we started this, I've had like 3 surgeries. Major surgeries. I've had 3 major surgeries. I've been married and had kids. On the show.
Right.
So, and moved across country numerous times. So, a lot has changed. I'm still competing. I don't compete as much as I did. But again, now I'm not 30, I'm 40.
Yep. Yep.
I'm not 32, I'm 42. So that takes its toll. And, the way I train has changed. I went from I was an employee at a training facility to now I own my own training facility. During the span of this show, my life has changed hugely. So.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I've taught at different universities, changed jobs.
Yeah.
I started in I was teaching in nutrition and dietetics departments. Now I'm back more to ex-phys. It's still with the nutrition flavor, of course, but yeah, totally.
When you go back, I mean, a lot has changed in our lives.
Oh, yeah. So. Oh, yeah. Mike, you were on, I was looking several times just as a guest. Like you kind of just, we became increasingly dependent on you. So, I mean, but yeah, how have things changed for you over the years?
Yeah, I mean, it's if you sit back and you kind of look at your life over the course of, I mean, I remember reading, your articles, Lonnie, at, T-Nation when I was working in the med tech industry. I think that they kind of changed how often they came out, but I think for a while they'd have like one per day, and for a while it was every Friday or whatever. And I remember literally taking my lunch break because I didn't have enough time to get to the gym over lunch and printing them out and, going to a place and eating them, reading them from, you and Chad Waterbury and John Berardi and all these other guys at the time. And now you fast forward a couple of years, you get to hang out with these people and go to different conferences, and now you're doing a podcast, with them, and that still kind of blows me away. Like, you're looking from the outside in, and you're like, oh, this is so crazy, and then once you're in the industry, you realize, oh my gosh, it's so small. Like, everyone does kind of
know each other,
know each other in some fashion. And yeah, I mean, I was doing a PhD in biomedical engineering for a while, and then dropped out of that, went over to do the exercise phys one. So I had just started doing that. I think the first time I was on the show with you guys and Charles Staley talking about energy drinks and some of the research I was doing on that. And yeah, I mean, pretty much tons of stuff have changed since then. I, stopped working at the medical device company, just did my own business full time, and then graduated, got my PhD. And then now my wife actually works for the business full time as of almost a year ago now. So it's been pretty cool to have the choice of what you want to do and to be able to travel and, go to different conferences. And that's one of the reasons I didn't go into academics full time is I kind of like some aspects of research. I love the teaching aspect, but man, I absolutely can't stand being on committees and having a really fixed schedule. It just causes me to lose my mind.
Yes.
So this is kind of a nice hybrid where I don't think 20 years ago I could even do what I'm doing now. I do some research studies, do some publications, but not a ton of it. Not doing it for money. It's just stuff that I enjoy doing. So it's, huge changes, especially with the internet and online and everything else, and podcast galore now too.
Oh yeah. Things have really, now don't get me wrong, in 2009, a lot of stuff was moving toward the online space from print media anyway, right? I mean, it's not like, that to me, 2009 in my mind doesn't seem like that long ago, but to our younger listeners are probably thinking, my God, I was a teenager, but not all. I mean, we have some salty, veterans too, but in fact, one of the topics that I've liked that we've talked about is that sort of shift to Web 2.0, and sort of getting to lament and bitch about the lack of gatekeepers, as far like editors. At least in the print world, you had, or even early web, you had editors either accepting or rejecting your work. And I know that still goes on, but it's also this ridiculous free-for-all, on podcasts and YouTube. I don't listen to other fitness podcasts. I know you're better at this than I am, Mike, but I'm so intolerant. I can barely make myself listen because, oh my God, they're so bad, some of them. Just erroneous, just mistaken bad advice, or, using terminology wrong. And that's my, like, red ink, like red pen professor mind. I'm like, oh, God, missed that one, -1, -2. And I'm trying not to do that so much, but there's so much of it. But just to give listeners some episodes, Chris Shugart, again, we talk about, like, the biotest and T-Nation. That's one of the ways that we all sort of bumped into each other. But Chris Shugart was on episode 486, and he was on once or twice before then, too, talking about fitness media and Web 2.0 and podcasts.
I think you have to do everything these days, because it's sort of like when blogging first began. There were a couple of popular bloggers like in our industry, and then everybody got a blog. And that's when you realize that, wow, people need editors.
Yeah.
So my job is secure. But so these days everybody has the YouTube page. Everybody has a podcast just about, I think it was kind of better in the old days in a way, because you find people you trust.
We had Danielle Cordero. Danielle Cordero is a friend of mine. She's an English prof. She was on episode 441, and again, she was talking about Web 2.0 and how we don't have editors anymore and how to navigate that world. Of course, we had Lou Schuler on as far back as episode 22. We had Lou, and he's been on more than once. And obviously, being a professional writer and editor, he's a great one, to talk about the fitness world. Because this has been thematic. Something that hasn't changed is I've bitched and moaned the whole time about how oftentimes in the strength fitness world, the businessmen aren't real businessmen, the scientists aren't real scientists half the time, and the writers aren't real writers. It's just this sort of bastardized, I don't know, fustercluck. Where people don't know any better, so they just try to take on roles, not realizing that there's a better way to do this. There's a real way to do this that's really better thought out than you think. But anyway,
I mean, even look at publication media. When we started, I think people were still they were generally still paying for articles back then. And now you've seen a water down in the material, and it's all like, well, we'll trade you an article for hits. We'll help push you. And it's like, well, bro, no, I'm out.
Totally.
I can put it on my own site.
Yeah.
So.
And even just the transfer, Lou was nice enough. The first time I was in Men's Health was in a feature article in 2011 after we hung out at the ISSN conference there in Vegas. So that was awesome and super appreciative of that. And over the years, I've noticed that it used to be, back when probably you guys even started, it's like, wow, if you were in a print magazine, that's huge, that's big time. Now it's like, it's cool. I still do some of them with a couple editors I know and like, but it doesn't really transfer that much to online. And I think the industry, like you were saying, Phil, is completely different now, where you could write for somebody's site that's kind of more popular, and if they put a link back to your site, that's pretty good. Not all the time do they do that. Compared to having a cover story in Men's Health, where I think that's really gone through a radical change.
Yeah, it has. I think there's been, sadly, a devaluation of the written word to such an extent.
Yeah.
There was once upon a time you'd get like $1 a word, or sometimes better, to write a fitness article and that kind of thing. And there's just been this massive devaluation. It's true that even fiction. Like if I go buy a fiction book, I'm like, wait, this paperback book, the PDF version's $1.99? Like what?
Yeah.
It makes me sad, right? So
yeah. Even just books in general boggle the mind. Like I bought the book Endure by Alex Hutchinson. Awesome book. Did a very good job with kind of the history of endurance and fatigue. And I think I paid $12 for the paperback on Amazon with free shipping. It showed up in like 2 days.
Yep.
And it took him, I think he said 6 years to write it. The fact that I can get all the distillation of his knowledge, and he did a good job with, having the references in the back and everything too, for $12, it still just boggles the mind.
Yeah, it's sad. Yeah. Because when you don't value it, I mean, what are young people missing out on? Because they're like, oh, well, they may or may not pick that up, but they don't recognize, like you said, that years and years of work that went into the observations, and it's sort of how we champion not just like a collegiate education but experience, the apprenticeship model. People don't appreciate the years that go into forming opinions. Like a friend of mine, Ron, he always talks about intelligence guided by experience. We kind of devalue all those years of experience sometimes, at least when it comes to what writers can provide, because you're like, well, it's $12. I don't know. How good can it be? Kind of thing. It's not exactly valuation marketing, but
yeah. And even on a similar note, as technology has expanded, I remember when I was teaching at St. Thomas, I put up my old phone with the iFleet app to do heart rate variability that had only been out for probably a couple of years at that time. And I'm talking to the students about it, and I'm showing them how to do it, the measurement. I'm like, oh, this is cool. We'll do something live. And they're like, well, how expensive is the app? And I'm like, oh, it's really cheap. You just need a heart rate monitor, and the app's only $9. They're like, $9? What are you, crazy? That's so expensive for an app. I'm like, but you realize that 2 years ago I was doing this in a lab with used equipment that cost us $10,000 to purchase.
Yep.
This is amazing. They're like, but still $9.
Yeah, I know it's not exactly the same thing, but I was paying, and I still do occasionally, but $33 for a serum sample to be analyzed for epinephrine. You know, something that kind of gets at the same thing that the HRV app. Now, I know they're different things, but both of them basically looking at your background, like your sympathetic drive and your recovery, and, you know, or $47 to analyze a blood sample for caffeine content, you know. And instead of that, here's a non-invasive thing for $9, you know, that can give you similar information without, bloodborne pathogen training and vacutainers and a lab and all that stuff, you know. So I have one last thing on my list of general topics, and we touched on this a little bit, but it's also been throughout. But appetite manipulation or big eats, you know, like we had an episode specifically called appetite manipulation. It was episode 430. We had John Mike on a couple of times talking about big eats. You know, but that's really been an ongoing thing, too. Phil, it wasn't that long ago. You were kind of lamenting, oh, my God, I'm tired of shoving stuff in my pie hole, you know. But that's an ongoing.
I got another 6 weeks of it.
Now, don't get me wrong. These guys are also eating a lot of clean food, too. I mean, you know, multiple chickens or whole turkeys or pounds of steak and that sort of thing. And then washing it down, though, with, you know, with some of this other stuff. And it just really kind of floored me that, you know, the nutrient partitioning was such that, you know, you could get away with that.
I was like, really, you eat all that chocolate cake and stuff? He says, you don't get it. He says, if I eat clean and nothing but clean, I just waste away. He says, I need to eat just calories. And at the end of the day, after all the cans of tuna and all the chicken and all that stuff, you're still, you know, I still am shy of what I want to hit calorically. So I just, you know, so then at that point, you just, you know, it's suicide mission, 3 McCain cakes and a bucket of ice cream, you know, kind of thing.
You know, I remember when I was in grad school, you know, we were all lifting and, you know, we were putting on weight very fast and everything. I remember eating, over a pound of pasta and, I don't know, pound and a half of ground turkey or ground beef. And I remember my brother and one of my training partners, he looked at me and said, you eat like a bird. And I thought, oh my God, is this what it's going to take? I mean, you know, a pound, I mean, that's like 2.5 pounds of just stuff in your gut. Related story is, another one of my roommates, I came home and he had a giant container of protein. I don't know what brand it was, and there was just a little bit in the bottom. And he's sitting there with a spoon watching TV, and I knew he had just bought it. And I'm like, dude, you know, I mean, it's gone. And to me, this borders on some kind of binge eating disorder. I mean, like, I think you just consumed 60,000 calories. You know? And he, you know, he ate it, and he ate it dry with a spoon. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what your problem is, but that's out of bounds. You're drifting out of bounds. And I'll tell you, for the next 48 hours, I think he just laid on his back with gas. It was horrific because obviously you can't digest, you know, 4.5 pounds or 5 pounds of dry protein powder. So,
so like, what are you eating, Phil?
Me?
I mean, yeah, like what does this look like?
About this the other day. So basically, one of my clients was talking to me the other day about it. He's distance, and he's like, "What are you eating?" And I was like, "Well, basically, we have our normal meals. So I'll wake up and have my breakfast, and you know that's normal: bacon, eggs, whatever. Like the other night, we had chicken and mashed potatoes and peas, but then anytime I go through the kitchen or drive to the gym, I always stop and get something. So like yesterday on my way to the gym, I stopped and got 3 pot pies and a bag of chips and a soda. That's my snack.
Nice.
For one of my snacks in between meals. So it's like that's what I do is I add on. Basically, I have the normal stuff, but then when I'm in an area like now, it's like anytime I have a chance to add in calories, I do it. So I make myself stop on the way to the gym and get something. And it's usually something, all I'm worried about is calories. So like with those little pot pies, I got 2,000 calories for $4.
Yeah.
So, and I can go microwave them at the gym and sit there and coach and eat a little pot pie.
Right.
So it's just adding on whatever. And this is a perfect season for it. So like everybody's bringing in cookies and stuff to the gym. Merry Christmas. I'll help you. Thanks.
Right.
So that's basically it. It's just have my normal meals and then add as much as I can in between.
Right. Cost per calorie. You said something years ago that stuck in my mind too. Like I think the average person would think, "Oh, chicken is a leaner alternative." And you were talking about, no, you go get those like $1.50 McChicken sandwiches with the mayo slathered on them. They're actually more calories than the burger.
Yeah.
And
that was an amazing thing. I noticed that when I moved to California because they forced the like McDonald's and stuff to put the calories on the board.
Oh, that's
amazing.
Right.
It was amazing for somebody looking to gain weight. I would pull up and I'd like, what can I get? Which one has the most calories for the least money?
Exactly.
I wasn't going by taste choice. I was like, how much bang for the buck can I get here?
Yeah.
So
the irony, and a lot of our listeners can identify, is the opposite, right? It's the opposite. Most people are looking for low cal, and you're like, no, give me the junkiest, highest calorie thing for cheap.
Yeah, and it was explained to him at that point, like this guy he can't get past 215. And it was like at that point it's calories, bro. That's all it is.
Yeah.
As long as you're getting your protein in and stuff like that, at a certain point, it's just more calories. So.
Yeah, once, I can't remember who said it, but I once heard something that stuck in my mind, which is nothing is more anabolic than a calorie. Like when you think about ultimately, whether people are using different supplements or drugs or whatever, it's still, a lot of it boils down to big eats, just calories. Become a bigger mammal kind of thing.
And I think a thing like that, like when we talk about with nutrition, there's certain nutrients and micronutrients you need, and then there's at some point you just got to eat big. I think the show's done a good service in that. Like we get both sides. We do a good job getting the science side and a good job getting the lifters. We've got we've got the gym windlers, but then we also have the Mikes and the other scientists and things like that.
Nick Bird or Stu Phillips.
Phillips.
Then you got the crazy freaks like Darren Willoughby, who's bull.
Right. He's giant.
I don't really know him. I've met him twice, but it's like, I got respect for that dude. He's a nerd that's jacked.
Yeah. Giant, ripped, and a prof. Yeah. Yeah, totally. But that's a good point too, is some of my my favorite iTunes reviews. And listeners, if you want to help the podcast and you haven't made an iTunes review and you have no cash during the fall funds drive, iTunes reviews really help. But when people say, I like that we get that varied perspective, like the hosts all have something different to bring. And like you said, Phil, like in the trenches type experiences versus what the science says, and that whole reciprocal model is how it's supposed to work. You're not supposed to have the people who are coaches or clinicians believing that only their perspective matters. And then you can't have the scientists looking down on everybody thinking only their perspective matters. What does the science say? And then does it pan out in the gym, in the power rack, kind of thing. And yeah, I do think we've done a pretty good job, sharing that kind of stuff.
Yeah, there's not a lot of shows where I think you get both of those perspectives, especially from one episode to the next, and especially at a super high level. You're not talking about people at a local level. You're talking about, national competitors and people from large research-based institutions and everything in between.
Yeah. And, each of us have just enough of a toehold to know that world, to see that world and open that gateway to everybody else. I don't think any of us are pretending that we're pinnacles of our professions, but Phil said something very early on, which is really a good philosophy to have, which is if I'm going to do something, damn it, I'm going to be good, good. And then you have to define what that means. Is that a regional or a national level competitor? If it's pro, you're going to make some hard decisions about what to give up or what to do in your life and that kind of stuff. But I do feel like we've reached a level of meathead and egghead, all of us, that we can talk intelligently, and then, like I said, open this gateway to this larger world to people. Like, how do you even begin? You know, like you said, Mike, people almost mystify, like, how do you break into the industry? Really, it's reach out to people, network, go to events, actually try to compete yourself. God knows I'm no expert on competitions, but I learned a hell of a lot in just the limited amount that I did.
Yeah, and that's the only reason, if I'm honest, why I even did any competitions was, if I'm coaching people, like, I should probably have some experience of what it's like. Not that I'm, doing anything at a national level per se. And like Phil, I took the approach of, with grip competitions, there's a lot locally. I just said, okay, everyone you have, I'm just going. It was more informal, and then doing some, powerlifting and strongman stuff too. But, I just don't care for any of that whole process. But I didn't want to be the person that's coaching someone else on how to do something with zero experience and not having put myself in that position. So,
I do that even in research. Is like I'll always sort of pilot something on myself so I know what I'm asking, kind of thing. Looking forward, because we're going to wind this down here because of the inserted clips here. But looking forward and looking back, one of the things we haven't done, which I would still like to do, is try to get a couple more of, like, old-timer or pro bodybuilders on. When we started the show, I had really hoped that we would get a lot more pro bodybuilders, because Rob knows them all, but he's just such a stubborn ass that you can't, like, he'd get in arguments with people, like, I'd be like, Rob, can you get him on the show? Like, you go back and forth. You know him well. In fact, at one point, he even got in a spat with Eddie Cohn. And I'm like, Rob, you were supposed to get...
I had to get Ed on. Because Rob kept fighting with him. I was like, I'll call.
Yes, right. Thank you, Phil. Let's get somebody with a little more... Now, Rob can be very professional when he wants to be, but he often doesn't want to be, Yeah, so I'm like, I begged you to get Eddie on the show, and instead you just piss him off, Rob. Or Tom Platz. He knows Tom personally. I would love to get Tom Platz on the show. And so looking forward, maybe the three of us will just have to reach out to some of these guys. It's a shame because, and don't get me wrong, I mean, Rob's flavor, what he brought to the show was very funny, and he really knows his shit. He really does. He's so opinionated and uncompromising. And I say that as his, really his best friend. He's just so opinionated and uncompromising. Anyway, but okay. Well, let's call it a show, and I guess, next episode we start a new decade.
Yep, there we go.
Awesome.
See you guys.
Yep.
See you.
Hey listeners, have you seen the store at IronRadio.org? There are 3 halls in the store. One for Phil, one for Fortress, and one for myself, Dr. Lowry, and they're thematic. So you can go into our Halls of Iron store and choose based on your goal. If you need something to learn or read or something nutritional, you can look in my store, Lonnie's store. If you want something about injury prevention or competition, then take a look at Phil's Hall of Iron. And if you want something about motivation or daily training, Fortress's Hall has what you're looking for. There are some fun, heroic descriptors as you browse through the store, so we try to make it a little more fun than the average boring online store. And whether you're a novice lifter or someone more experienced, you can take heart that you're not wasting your time. The things that we put in each Hall of Iron are actually based on our own recommendations. Protein powders that we know to be good, knee sleeves, wraps of some kind, things that Fortress uses in his own training. The stuff you see, is good. This way you don't waste time. So check out the Iron Radio store at ironradio.org and let us know what you think on the forums, and certainly you can request products and we will screen them before they go in. So thanks for listening.
Iron Radio is accepting donations. If you like what we do, the professors, the scientists, the bodybuilding show promoters, the athletes themselves in powerlifting and bodybuilding, please consider making a donation or maybe buying something from the IronRadio.org store. We also are accepting supporting members. So for $4 a month, which is frankly less than the bank sneaks out of your account in fees, you can step up and support a form of sort of public radio for the bodybuilding and powerlifting and strength community. The Iron Radio podcast and all of the audio on ironradio.org is for informational purposes only. If you're interested in starting a diet or exercise program, it's important to check with your physician. Also seek the help of registered dietitians, athletic trainers, and qualified exercise physiologists in order to make the progress that you need.